Good day, viewers. I welcome you all for another session of our podcast. I am your regular host, Arun Radhakrishnan, Director of Engineering at Relevance. Today, special guest joining us, Mr. Karan Sondhi. He is a Vice President and Chief Technology Officer at Trellix. So, Karan, feel free to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Arun. I'm Karan Sondhi, Chief Technology Officer for Trellix. I oversee all the tech execution for global public sector business inside the company. For the folks who are not familiar with the name Trellix, we formed as a merger of two entities, FireEye and McAfee, two strong portfolios of innovative technologies, and huge customer base, as many of you probably recognize the brands. We decided, there's a new era in cybersecurity, and we wanted to have a new brand to represent that. So Trellix is the new entity and the new brand that we're using.
Okay. So, Karan, as a CTO of this Trellix organization, so what excites you most about your role as a CTO?
So, it's interesting. I think my role is quite unique in the company and probably in the industry. I play multiple roles inside the company. On one hand, I play a role of tech evangelizing. So inside the company, I serve as an advocate for using new tech, new tools, right? Just recently we were talking about using a more sophisticated and more streamlined project management tool internally to manage all the pipeline of projects, all the sales related activities next to it, any customer experience issues that we might run into. And on the flip side, in front of customers, I serve as a tech evangelist for our internal technologies, the ones that we build, all the cybersecurity tools. And on the third side of the house, I serve as a revenue driver for the company, right? So inside the company, I'm focused on basically improving processes, making lives better for our employees and telling them about new technologies that are out there. And I partner closely with our CIO and our CISO to help make that happen. On the customer tech advocacy, I work with our pre-sales engineers, our account executives to basically get in front of customers and talk about, hey, here's a wide gamut of tools that we have. I mean, we're the only company in the cybersecurity space that has everything from email security to SecOps and everything in between. We have a very comprehensive portfolio. And a lot of the customers that we have in strategic roles, C-suite roles or generals or overseeing security operations, they want to have someone who can come in and talk about security strategy. So I play that role in evangelizing a lot of our technologies, looking at it from 1,000-foot level and saying, hey, here's how you start prioritizing some of your cybersecurity investments. Here are some tools that you should start to put in place as you're making a transition to the cloud. Here are some things that you might want to consolidate. And then sometimes, this sounds sort of unusual for people who are trying to promote their tools. We talk about consolidating our tools. Like, hey, you might not need all three of these tools now that you've modernized your infrastructure, right? A lot of our customers are going to Chromebooks. And we start to talk to them about, hey, do you really need to be monitoring the endpoints in the more traditional way? First of all, there's really no antivirus tool needed to be pushed onto a Chromebook. However, there's all this data that you can pull out from Chromebooks and device usages from a SecOps perspective and start monitoring those from a more modern, sophisticated approach. So we start talking to our customers about kind of modernizing their tooling, modernizing a lot of their security capabilities that they have in their environment. And on the third side, I'm basically taking all these experiences of working with customers and partnering with our engineering organization and saying, hey, look, a lot of our tools are meeting our customer needs, but let's take, for example, our customers in the DoD and intelligence community, right? There's a big challenge in bringing technologies to those customers because they don't have access to the commercial cloud like you and I do. They don't have access to the internet and some of these more sensitive, classified networks that they operate in. So we want to start bringing some of these more advanced tools that are enabled by cloud technology inside those environments. So I'm basically serving as an evangelizer to our engineering work to say, hey, we need to invest in building more SaaS solutions that are designed for the intelligence community or for the Department of Defense in the United States. And here's our roadmap and our strategy to help bring those tools and manage some of the costs incurred in making that happen. So that's kind of a quick summary of a very busy role, which I consider to be quite unique, and I quite frankly love it. I've had various different CTO roles throughout my career, and this one's definitely one of the best ones that I've had so far.
Okay, so when you introduce the new technology to a wide range of customer base, so what are the challenges usually you go through, Karan?
So it's interesting. You find folks in all spectrums of interest. There's the not so sophisticated customer who thinks, well, I have a whole bunch of data centers, locally stored data, bunch of old school farms of document storage, for example, or file storage, and they've been using traditional security tools to manage all of that. And they're like, well, we want to get to the cloud and we want to kind of shortcut our approach to the cloud. And we want to quickly basically buy a whole bunch of modern security tools that can help us protect our data in the cloud while bringing some of the more traditional endpoint security products in place too. So we start having these conversations with them. And the not so sophisticated customers think that they can just leapfrog their way there, be like, hey, I could just shut down my old school stuff and then just go into the cloud and my problems go away. It's like, well, no, you have a completely different set of problems that you have to focus on in the cloud side. And they basically expose us to what they're trying to do, and they want us to bring some of our industry experience in transitioning customers, right? We are one of the largest cybersecurity providers in the world, across basically all countries around the globe. We service customers, so we see all sorts of different challenges. So we come to them and say, hey, look, from our experience, these are the things you want to be mindful of. It's very customer driven, very unique to what they're doing today. And then you have the second end of the spectrum, where customers are quite sophisticated, meaning they have a very mature SOC, they have a very mature process for protecting a lot of their data set, but they're still getting breached. And they're wondering, what are some things that they need to either add to their tool chest, or what are some tweaks they need to make to their environment? And what we find there is actually a mix of both, more modern and sophisticated security tools. Like a lot of data is typically in these, security operations centers going into a SIM. We're talking about sophisticated customers now. And they're saying, hey, I have all this data in the SIM. I've got all these threat hunters in my environment, but it's getting a little bit too much for me to manage. Clearly, because I'm still getting breached, I'm still having things that are getting missed. So we talked to them about our XDR strategy and how automating some of the SecOps functions can help alleviate some of the stress and burden on your SecOps team. And that technology decision is really evolutionary. Maybe for some it could be a revolution depending on how many people that they have. If they have a lot of people, then it's an evolutionary step. If they barely had any people and they got XDR in place, they're like, holy cow, I took my SecOps team of 4 people and turned it into the power of almost 10, right? So with a lot more automation built into XDR. So anyway, I see spectrums of customers on both extremes. The meat of our business is typically in the middle, to be candid with you, right? But the extreme cases are always fun and interesting because you don't get to see them all that often, and those conversations are quite fun.
Got it. So you have been in this industry for quite some time, right? So in your experience, you have seen how this industry has evolved so far. So can you give a quick summary on how this evolution, how do you see this evolution process, Karan?
Yeah, in fact, a lot's changed since I answered this question even last year. So, the story I used to tell last year was, hey, 10 years ago, we were all fighting for any kind of investment in cybersecurity because nobody was really paying attention to it. People were doing it because they were mature and they had IT operations. They're like, hey, we need to have security, but it wasn't being done at the same wave and investment and sophistication that it is today. I tell this story often and a lot of interviews that I remember scraping a whole bunch of money together just to buy tools when I was running security teams and basically deploying security engineering capabilities. Now you're not scraping together a tool. You have a defined budget for security operations. It's not a carve out from the IT budget or the CIO budget. It's a dedicated security budget, which is great. But what's happening is the budget is not keeping up with the level of attacks. It's the first trend. Two, the IT budget increases based on business needs, right? So it's like, okay, and I'm going to make up arbitrary numbers. Let's say 2 years ago, the investment was about $1 million into any kind of IT modernization activity across the organization. That's lumped in with giving people new laptops, bringing people technologies to allow remote work, but also, just improving core business functions, revenue drivers, like, hey, we're going to adopt new serverless technologies inside of the cloud. We're going to move more of our data into the cloud. As they make these investments, there's not a specific line item that says, oh, here's how much we need to make investments in security. The security budget is largely flat. There's a small incremental bump. It's like, okay, you had $1 million. Let's make up more realistic numbers. If it's $1 million in IT, it's probably $200,000 in security, right? It's like, okay, we're going to take you from $200,000 to $250,000. Incremental increase. It's like, wait, why is it that the IT budget is directly defined based on the business outcome. Hey, we need to make more mobile apps. We need to bring more data overseas. We need to provision more of our data closer to the customer to enable them to stream some of our data or capture some of that data. It's like, okay, great. These are great business improvements. Has anybody defined what the cost of securing some of these applications is going to be? No, they haven't.
No. Mm.
It's still that same flatline security thing. Oh yeah, here's another 50K for you to increase. They think that, it's just data at the end of the day, right? You're going to get it into a SIM. You might have to pay more licensing fees to bring in more data, but nothing generally has changed. It's like, no, everything changes. Everything changes. When you bring a new app or a new capability, the whole paradigm shifts on what your security boundary looks like, what the data boundary looks like, and a whole host of other issues come up about how do you allow internal employees to access that data and how our customer is going to be interacting with that data?
Okay.
So that's the first challenge. I think the second challenge is, and this is new, and we advocate for this, is there needs to be more layered security. Before, you used to just wash our hands off of, hey, we didn't have antivirus at the endpoint. We might put some DLP solutions. We might do device control. We've got all these sort of point solutions in place for the endpoint. Then people started saying, okay, now let's go towards EDR. We need to be able to do, endpoint detection and response. It's not just about preventing the malware. It's like, hey, post breach, if you do get breach, what do you do in terms of responding to it? So people are still making incremental investments, but people aren't saying, well, like, for example, the email push is a big one that we're doing this year. We have an email security solution, okay, but did you get a phishing attack? Yes, we did. The phishing attack actually impact your business? It's like, yes, we did. It makes me mad because I just bought this email security solution and I should be good. It's like, no, it's layered. You got to have two vendors. It sounds weird, but it's like you have one Band-Aid around your finger. Unfortunately, security's got to a point where you need to put another one just to make sure that, no infections go in and none of the blood comes out. And that's not something we're used to, right? Think about it. And it's reasonable. It's like me asking you to put two bumpers on your car, two side airbags on your car.
Right.
We've reached a point where security breaches are so impactful to the business that having dual email security is actually the nature and how things should be moving forward. So a lot of our customers find ourselves, right, either using Google email security or Microsoft email security or Proofpoint email security. And we go to them and say, hey, look, here's the data. The data shows that, over 1 million infectious emails get missed by Microsoft. And, if any one of them ended up actually penetrating, meaning either the malware-ridden file got into your network or the user clicked on the link that was a targeted phishing attack on that user, they were trying to steal credentials or they were trying to get access to the internal network, that's pretty impactful to your business. So when we have these conversations with them about having a second email solution in place, a layered security approach, it's completely new to them.
Okay.
And I think that's the second big trend, is that there's this whole notion of having two tools monitoring for, unfortunately, the same domain, right? So if you're buying Microsoft's email security, you're going to want to have ours right behind it. If you're buying Google's email security solution, you're going to want us behind it. Similarly, with Proofpoint, depending on your investment there, we would argue that you might not need them. You could just use ours. But we know a lot of our customers are bundled into a Microsoft solution, and they get email security included. So they're like, hey, it's no cost to me to use it. And we say, well, yeah, there is. Here's all the stuff that it misses. You might want to, consider using our email security. Anyway, enough on that topic. The third big trend, I believe, is actually process and organization driven. And no more vendor specific talk for the rest of this podcast, I promise.
Okay.
This is more like just structurally driven. I'll use you as an example. You probably remember a time where CISO roles, and I think this is true in a lot of organizations even today, is like a central function. There's a new app being deployed, a new server being deployed, or a new capability being deployed, and there's all these security requirements coming into a center part of the organization. They look at your documentation, they push out security controls, or they, suggest security controls. A lot of people back in the day didn't even have access to a lot of these systems. It's like, okay, these are the changes we want you to make, and this is how we're going to guide you. Do you think that the way things are happening in the business world or in the innovation world, that having a central CISO function or a central security function is going to keep up with the demand of the business? You tell me. No.
Probably not. Yeah.
No, there's just no way. Like more apps are being deployed than any central function can keep up with.
Yeah.
And this is to the credit of my former CISO, right? When I was at CIA, he said the same thing. The organization is so big, we have so many capabilities. We can't centralize this function and expect that we'll be able to just staff up with unlimited headcount and unlimited resources to meet the demand of a massive organization doing mission all across. To his credit, he basically invented what I have been a proponent of. I stole his idea, right? His name was Bob Bigman. I don't know if he's going to hear this podcast, but he invented this idea of having forward deployed CISOs. In the government lingo, it's called ISMs, Information Security Managers. And this is an advisory role that was embedded in different parts of the organization. And their entire purpose in life is to look at everything that specific business is doing and start getting the people to start thinking about security. Because there was no sustainable way for you to bring that function inside of a security organization and do security functions. So it's better for you to take that talent, export it into the project organization, teach everybody good security practices, right? Push out static code analysis, push out better vulnerability and patch management processes, push out, security controls. Hey, how are we going to protect this edge device? We're going to put a monitoring or a listening device on there to make sure that none of the, customers that are not supposed to be using this platform are coming in. Or maybe let me say that a bit more cleanly. Nobody's penetrating this environment or trying to attempt to breach this environment. Okay, what are we going to do with this data? Okay, you can't monitor it. Okay, the activities you can't monitor because you don't have your own SIM tool or you don't have your own dashboard or you don't have a monitoring capability. That makes sense. You can send that to a central function because you can't staff that, right? But in terms of implementing good security practices, that should be decentralized. To prove that this is how things are going to be happening moving forward, I went to a CISO boot camp that RSA hosted late last year. I want to say around late November. And, it was a great gathering of a whole bunch of CISOs from all over the country, actually all over the European region. It was hosted in the UK. And a lot of the CISOs came in and said sort of the same thing, which is, man, it's getting inundating. On one hand, I have sort of the picture perfect design role of being a CISO, which means I look at a bunch of reports, I look at the risk posture of the organization, I advise the board, I advise the C-suite on what they should be doing, what is the issues that are kind of top of mind this week. And then I'm begging for money and doing the execution. But on the second side, I have the actual role of implementing security best practices. And it's hard to keep up with both. And I went out and evangelized the idea. I said, hey, I've got an idea for you. It's quite old and it came from the government, which sounds kind of weird. But it actually works, which is you decentralize and almost like the spirit of blockchain technology, you decentralize and democratize this knowledge. Instead of centralizing it under you, you hire a whole bunch of experts in cybersecurity. They count as your headcount, but you put them on the project teams. This idea worked. The CISO called me 2 months later, and this was actually just 2 weeks ago that he buzzed me, right? And we were just catching up, shooting the breeze. He's like, hey, I actually tried this, right? I had a project where we were deploying out new apps. And unfortunately, I can't share the industry, but it's actually not a tech industry. It's more of a traditional industry, I should say, like consumer goods kinds of industry.
Okay.
And they said, hey, we pushed out new apps. I took one of my engineers, I embedded him into the project team. We implemented a whole bunch of security controls. It was so much easier than waiting for them to send us their paperwork, waiting for them to brief us on what's going on. A lot of the tactical level execution happened right in that same project team.
Okay.
He gets visibility as to what's going on. He gives advice when it's necessary, and we'll see how the project evolves, right? They're still in the very infancy stage of this, but the early feedback is very positive. So that's I think one very old idea that could revolutionize the way we probably do security in the modern day, which is decentralizing and democratizing it. Do you do that in your organization today?
Okay, so maybe I should try that.
You should. And it's actually pretty exciting for the security engineers. Think about it, right? They're part of a high energy project, right? This new app that the CEO or the business is looking for. It has all the visibility. It's high energy. It's high exciting times, right? And they're going to be part of something that's going to have a big launch, most likely, right? Any new capability the organization has a lot of energy behind it typically. And it's going to help their career. Instead of being in a central role where they're just looking at paperwork and responding back to emails and feeling like, hey, They made some small contribution. No, you're part of the core project team. Just
Mm.
like the developers, just like the product manager, just like the, revenue operations lead there. He's a defined person on that team. That's, I think, a very big change that needs to happen. And I think you'll find that, maybe for the listeners of this podcast, or other people who might have an opportunity to talk to me, that once you try it,
Mm.
give it about 6 months for it to get some real legs and momentum under it. And you'll see that it's actually going to change the way you actually operate.
Okay. And we are following this practice, and I highly encourage that. Security should not be afterthought, and this should not be a responsibility of one team. It's a collective responsibility, and we need to infuse this security from the earlier stage of software development. So maybe one another aspect is bring the expert inside the team, like we do the DevOps. All those things we do, we bring the expert inside the team, and they contribute to the product development, right? The same way we need to consider security as well. Okay, good. Good.
Yeah, exactly. And one last comment I'll make about that is
Right.
I've tried doing sort of the traditional approach, which is, hey, we're going to just teach people how to become good security practitioners. And I think that's necessary, right? Because everybody can benefit from it.
Mm.
But if you look at it, the motivations are not aligned. And I learned this the hard way. When
Okay.
I was pushing static code analysis, and
Mm.
now it's everybody uses it. Everybody has some static code analysis tool.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
12 years ago, maybe even longer,
Mm.
it was not a very common thought to use static code analysis.
Right.
And when I went to developers and I said, hey, I'm buying this tool for you,
Mm.
I'm even paying for you to get trained on it, they were like all for it. They use the tool. They love having their baby secured, right? It's their application. They want it to be super secure. They were very proud of it.
Mm.
But after a little while, what started to happen is the pressures from product managers was less about the security of their applications, more on delivery of their applications. Think about it.
Mm.
You're a business owner, right? Let's say you're a CEO. What's the number one pressure point that you're typically hitting someone on? Hey, where are we with generating revenue from something, or where are we with delivery of an application, right? Those are the two number one or top two things that you focus on. You rarely say, hey, how secure was that application? True or not true?
Yes. Yes.
True, right?
Yeah.
So what do you think the developer is going to be more focused on? Making sure that he can quickly pump out his application, even with the vulnerabilities in it, because that's what he gets measured on,
Mm-hmm.
or delaying the release of the application so he can actually do the security controls and patch bugs and focus on things that the security vulnerability tool found. They're
Mm.
always going to prioritize delivering on time,
Right.
even if they knew about the vulnerability. I'm not saying that out of they're not doing it out of malice. They're doing it out of the pressure from the business.
Right. Right.
What do you do in this kind of scenario? Well, you have two choices. You either work with a product manager and the leadership to say, hey, look, and this is hard. I'm not saying this is easy. This is especially hard for a developer whose
Mm.
primary role is to pump out code, right? They may not be the most eloquent speaker. They may not have the talent to be able to make a business case potentially. But this could be potentially one approach, which is them going to the leader to say, hey, I'm using all these tools to protect this application. It's going to delay the delivery of the application by a month, but that will cause less headaches for us down the road. So here's what I suggest. We could put it out in a small beta group while I work to patch all these vulnerabilities. So you
Mm.
get early delivery or on-time delivery, but it's not going to be ready for production users yet. Or you negotiate some other kind of timeline to enable these, security practices to be implemented. Or second, we go back to the premise of this conversation, which is if I had a dedicated security evangelist inside that organization who knew how to use these, security tools like static code analysis, for example, and they knew how to actually patch some of these coding things, which are hard. Not all security practitioners are developers. Then you would have someone who's dedicated on, hey, go ahead and focus on delivering the application. I'll work to patch this. And if I run into a roadblock, I'll come and reach out to you. You can only do that when they're integrated in the team. You can't do that when they're taking that report, sending it off to another office to go look at that report. They're going to get to it after they get through the rest of the stack of pile of reports. It just doesn't work.
Sure. Sure. So the cultural change is also necessary to bring keeping security as their key priority, right? So
Yeah, it is. It is. And it takes time. It takes time. And look, we're a case in point for this too. We were delivering a lot of new innovative tech out to the commercial users. It's fast, it's readily available, right? There's these new exciting AWS services that come on, every 3 months or so. Like these new, Gen AI capabilities that AWS pumped out. Our team was right on top of it. They were like, hey, we're going to start using it. When when you're making this fast push to enabling new tech, sometimes you have to put a pause and say, well, these are great new technologies for our commercial customers who can access our commercial cloud and get access over the internet. But what about our, vast majority of public sector customers globally, not just here in the US, globally? They're not going to be able to get this because some of these AWS regions that are, in Europe or in Singapore or in Japan or in disconnected environments like the ones that the intelligence community uses and the DoD uses, they don't have the latest and greatest tech. So what do you do? Well, that's where roles like mine become quite instrumental. We go out to the head of engineering and have a discussion with them to say, hey, we need to continue to accelerate and innovate, but we need to have a plan in place for how we're going to not change the product to a point where some of our DoD, IC, and public sector customers globally won't be able to benefit from it. So what are some, unfortunately, I don't want to use this all the time, but what are some existing tech? I was about to use legacy, but maybe that's not the right word, right?
Right.
You never want to say, hey, what's the legacy tech that we could use to help the DoD? But what are some existing technologies that AWS has in these regions that our customers can still benefit from, while, you as an organization making a push to, use the latest AWS commercial capabilities? And there's a way to do it, right? I mean, Snowflake is a perfect example. We're making a big push to moving our data lake, into or our data warehousing capability away from OpenSearch and into Snowflake. And we made that bet strategically. We went to Snowflake and said, hey, look, if we're going to do this, we need to make sure that you guys have a roadmap and a plan for getting your Snowflake data platform accredited for IL5 and FedRAMP. These are two very important government certifications here in the United States. If they had no plan, we would have never made that investment. But of course, they were already FedRAMP moderate approved. They had a plan in place for getting FedRAMP high. They're pushing to try to get IL5, and we're partnered up with them. So we pick technologies that the commercial world can benefit from today while making that investment strategically so that our DoD and intelligence community customers or our global public customers, public sector customers can also benefit from the same tech. Because the vendor that we've chosen for some of these technologies or our technology partners that we've chosen, they've agreed to make investments to get these certifications. It sounds boring. It might not resonate with a lot of public, podcast listeners, but if you support any government agency or you're part of any public organization that doesn't have access to non-accredited or non-certified services, this should resonate very deeply. Because, usually the code base that the commercial users use is typically not the same one that public sector customers use. Whereas at Trellix, we're purely focused on trying to minimize, code-based changes, which means that, there'll be less differences between two environments. There'll be less delays and new capabilities being available to the commercial environment and the public sector customer. And just generally it makes innovation faster inside the company.
Got it. So this is the new trend. So the product development companies are following. Focus on only your competency and to collaborate with experts in other areas so that we can create this successful product in a short amount of time, right? So that is a trend you are also observing, I believe, Karan. So in that case, how security is maintained? Because then we need to consider security aspect of the platform or the product or service we are integrating with our product, right? So in that case, so what are the security aspects company has to pay attention to?
So I'll speak from the perspective of Trellix, right?
Sure.
And maybe I'll give you some examples of how customers who use our products are looking at it too. So first things first, I think there's this huge push in the industry to focus on the things that your core competencies are in. So we very consciously have said, hey, we're not in the data warehousing business. We're not taking the same approach as, CrowdStrike and SentinelOne and kind of homegrowning and building out their own, data lake and their own data warehousing capabilities. We've said, hey, Snowflake has done a phenomenal job in the industry of building great data warehouses. They have a whole customer base and a whole motivation and a business around it. Let's just attach ourselves to the people who are best at it. We're best at detection. We're best at security. Let's focus our core expertise around those, right? We're not great at cloud. We don't build cloud infrastructure. AWS is great at cloud. Let's go use cloud infrastructure from AWS. We'll use our, technology on top of AWS. So there's going to be a big push in focusing on what your core expertise are and then outsourcing the rest or leveraging and partnering with other tech companies. Like we're partnered up with Zimperium for a lot of our mobile device management capabilities, and we love it. They're a great partner of ours. We're also going to be announcing later this year a partnership with another company to allow us to service a very growing and high threat vector. Not ready quite yet to say anything, but I would expect by summer that we're going to make a big announcement around that. So we think there's going to be a big push in the whole industry, and I think we're definitely spearheading some of it. And that, hey, our core expertise in detection, all the data on the internet shows that very, very well. We are highest rated in detection for endpoint, email, and a whole bunch of other products. So everything else that doesn't fall in line with the detection and security paradigm, we're going to go ahead and leverage other tech. And you're going to just see that. That's internally to Trellix. Externally, I think companies are still figuring out what their core expertise are. I won't name specific customers, but one customer has been struggling. They still have a bunch of homegrown tools that they invested so much time into for kind of managing their security operations. And they're like, well, I made all this investment in building out these dashboards and these rules. What's going to happen to it? Because I'm going to have to basically dump all of that and go to all this new tech that you're showing me, which is great. They admitted that it was great. They had no issues with its greatness. But they were just so married and invested in this. They said, oh, I have to retool, I have to retrain, I have to do everything from scratch here. And I'm like, well, you're going to have to start some point. I mean, you're only delaying the inevitable, even if you don't pick me and my tech, right? And I told this customer this, even if you don't pick my stuff, you're eventually going to have to let this go because you're not going to be able to sustain this forever. And they weren't building all of it in-house. A vast majority of it was in-house. They were building on top of another platform, who I also won't name. So some people just have to, come to their own conclusion that, okay, now is the time for us to dump what we were doing before and start fresh with something new. And that's their best chance to say, hey, what are we good at? Like I say this often, there are a whole bunch of articles on the internet saying the same thing, which is I think hospitals are overwhelmed, under budgeted to handle a lot of security capabilities. The more sophisticated ones are. They're well capitalized. Some of our biggest customers in this space, they have a lot of capital they've invested in security. They're very good at security. They're making the right investments in security. But there's no harm in the small to mid-sized hospital systems, right, that are not huge, that only have a couple of hospitals in a certain state or in a certain city. There's no reason for you to buy security tools. You're never going to be able to retain the talent to do that, right? So you're just going to have to innovate by outsourcing it to, pick your favorite CSP, right? Or MSSP or MDR service, and just outsource it to someone who does this for a living. So they're going to have to make those innovations. Those aren't tech innovations. Those are process innovations. Those are mindset innovations. It's also an innovation of the CISO thinking differently. It's like, hey, what's going to happen to my role? Like, why do you need a CISO if everything is outsourced? Well, no, you still need to be the business advocate. You still need to manage the relationship with the MSSP. Your role isn't going anywhere. In fact, you're going to be more focused on some of these things because somebody's going to do the day-to-day management of security operations. It's going to happen. I mean, mark my words. Eventually, the hospitals are going to give up and having their own, SOC team and having their own endpoint response team. They're just going to outsource it because it's just going to be cheaper and more sustainable.
Okay. So with all the great system and the secure system in place, still all these security breaches and hack attacks are still going on, right? Considering the recent incident happened in 23andMe. So negligently, end users recycle their credential, it seems. So the credential stuffing is one of the famous attack. I believe using that, they were able to hack 14,000 accounts. So that led to 6.4 million, if I'm not wrong. So that many user information exposed. So that is one of the problems. So here main problem is customer recycle their credentials, right? So how to educate our user, even the two-factor authentication, multi-factor authentication, all those things are in place. Why do you think, Karan, it is still happening? So because of the lack of education, or people don't see the seriousness behind it?
So, sometimes, this is, you picked a good topic for me. So here's my view. there's two approaches to being a successful CISO or leader when it comes to security engineering, right? When I ran security engineering, I built a whole file and a reputation as being an aggressive bull in the China shop guy. But guess what? Every project that I focused on that I ran, at least during my time, they had some of the best security technology in place. Yes, there was disruption to users. Yes, there was a delay in, delivery of projects, but not a single breach happened during that period of time.
Mm.
So you have a choice. You can
Mm.
either let hell loose in your organization now
Mm.
by pushing and shoving some of these things. I hate to use these strong words, but it is almost literal. This is what you have to do. If your organization is resisting common sense security practices and you have no choice, you were elected as a CISO or you were elected as a head of engineering for security, your job is to push these tools at almost all cost into your users' hands,
Got
right?
it.
Maybe your secretary finds it quite frustrating that they have to do a two-factor authentication to
Mm.
log in to emails to be able to kind of manage the calendar for someone. Well,
Mm.
guess what? That's an annoyance you're going to have to live with and you're going to have to get used to. There's
Mm.
no
Mm.
sugarcoating it. The more you sugarcoat it, I almost feel like you appease them and you make them feel like there's a potential alternative outcome. No, of course you're going to have two-factor
Mm.
authentication. You're just going to have to get used to it. This is a new process, right? Um, and guess what? They get over it after a little while. In the beginning, they're grumpy. People complain about transitions of going from one app to the other, but
Yeah.
after a while, it becomes routine and they forget about it. It's not an issue.
Yeah.
So that's number one. I think you just need to be aggressive, and it's okay depending on how what your personality is. For me, it was totally fine that I
Mm.
built a reputation of being a bull in the china shop. It was totally fine that some people did not want to invite me into their projects. I was like, hey, I get it. I get it. I will take 8 out of 10 success than trying to become the guy who appeases everybody, gets everybody invited. It's like I don't want to be the guy who gets invited to every party. I want
Mm.
to get invited to the party where people know that I'm going to make an impact on their business or make an
Yeah.
impact on the project.
Okay. Okay.
Um, so that's number one. Just be aggressive. Like
Mm.
you brought up two-factor authentication. Yes, you need to have it. There's no question about it. Well, it might disrupt some activities of the business. Well, you need to change some of that then. You need to make it less disruptive by either educating your user on how to use it or make it frictionless so that these security capabilities don't require people to jump through a lot of hoops. The second thing is,
Mm.
I mean, gosh, like I can't believe even in this day that we're having this conversation, but in a lot of our public sector space, people are still not patching and updating their systems aggressively. There's like no process around it. In the
Yeah.
modern day, there is no good patch management process in place. And we proved this. Like I sat around a table. Gosh, I wish I could share more. But this is as much as I can share. I sat around a table with a whole bunch of leaders and they said, why are we like raising hell and forcing people to get the latest version of Adobe Reader? It's like it's breaking a lot of our scripts, it's breaking a lot of our apps. Like
Mm.
nobody's going to be able to use it.
Mm.
And I looked at everybody. I was like, literally, I don't need to buy a single security tool
Mm.
to monitor for this specific attack. If all you do is push every user the latest version of Adobe Reader, because this attack is not going to be successful.
Okay.
It costs you zero money. Like, yes, it's going to be a little disruptive. You're going to have to change some of your apps. You're going to have to change that anyway. The thing that I find comical is sometimes people believe that they can just delay the inevitable. No, you're going to have to go to the latest version of Adobe Reader. It's like the government for the longest time was stuck on Windows 7. It's like you're going to eventually have to go to Windows 10. Might as well start testing it ahead of time, changing a lot of
Mm.
your apps or modernizing your apps so that it'll be ready. It's like it's not like you're not going to move to the new OS and you can just delay it. Luckily, the government's come a long way now, and there's a whole process around patch management in a lot of these organizations, and they're modernizing a lot of the endpoints. But I think, people just need to be aggressive. You need to tell people that you're going to have to change your applications to support the latest version of whatever, you know, less vulnerable application there is. Or sometimes you use it as a chance to leapfrog. Like,
Mm.
uh, I did this a lot when I worked for one of the big cloud providers. I went out and talked to customers and said, hey, a lot of your security problems can actually go away if you start using serverless tech. You
Mm.
spin it up when you need to, and it goes away when you don't need it. Done.
Okay.
Problem solved, right? They're like, it can't be that easy. It is. It's actually harder for you to do that because you have to change the way your app works. You have to change the way a lot of things work. But you don't have to do anything new for security if you just make that one change.
Right.
And,
Right.
so you pick your investments.
Got it. Got
You
it.
know, I've been in this industry for a while. You know which way they pick, right? Oh, I'll
Mm.
just buy more security controls, or I'll put in more security controls and I'll monitor for this attack.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
changing what they need to change, they'll just monitor for the attack and hope and pray that, nobody makes them a target.
Sure, sure. So the picking between the convenience and security and the speed, right? So between these three, is there a way we can make this whole experience better for our customers so that they will adapt to all these process? Because sometimes it is I myself felt that, okay, why I need to do all those things? Why can't we make it easy, right? So is there any existing projects or pipeline that is currently you see or you hear
So
about? Uh,
Yeah, so let me use an analogy, right? I get this a lot from my family. And I'm going to use this analogy and then I'm going to come back to the question that you asked for. So,
mm,
I was an early adopter and this will surprise nobody. I'm an early adopter for pretty much any tech,
okay,
right? If you want a sucker to buy your stuff that's brand new, I'm your guy, right? I'll most likely buy it.
okay,
So just come knocking on my door and be like, "Hey, I got this new shiny thing. You want
okay,
to try it?" I'll be 100% yes. I'm a
okay.
game.
Mm,
So, I bought Tesla. I bought the Tesla Model 3. I was among like the first 100 buyers of it here in Virginia.
mm,
There wasn't a lot of charging infrastructure available inside the state at the time. It
mm,
was coming up, but nothing was available at the time. So I would have to charge at home, and I would have to strategically charge when I'm taking a road trip. Obviously, that problem has gone away now. There's huge charging
sure.
infrastructure in place.
Mm,
Yet, whenever I talk to my family, they're like, I'll have to make a pit stop on my way to New York. Whereas
mm,
if I could just fill up my gas tank
mm,
once in Virginia, I can go all the way to New York without making a single stop. It's like, I mean, yes, sure, you have to make two stops. They may be at most 30 minutes in total, right? Because fast charging is pretty darn good.
mm,
I have to go to the bathroom too, probably. I'm just saying, right? It's a 4-hour drive. Is it really that big of a deal if I'm making you sit around for another 15 minutes? Maybe you pick up some snacks. So
mm,
you just have to change people's mindset and
yeah,
help them see that a 30-minute compromise for a vehicle that has no more oil changes, that's
mm,
not bad for the environment, that's super
sure.
convenient because you charge it at home and you're done every day. You just go do your thing. Has
Mm,
all this new tech around it, is worth the compromise.
mm,
So the same thing needs to happen in security. There needs to be a leader who comes in, who's just friendly, who's willing to kind of work with people and have these conversations. And at some point says, look, I'm going to try to make it convenient, but if you're still going to be a roadblock, I'm going to put on my bull in a hat and I'm going to be a bulldozer and a bull in a china shop. And I'm just going to go in and push this down because I know it's going to be good. It doesn't always work. Caveat, it doesn't always work.
yeah,
But I'll still take 80% success rate. And I think that's what needs to happen. Sometimes it's going to be convenient. Uh,
mm,
my car is conveniently charged at home.
yeah,
So what's convenient mean? Well, if you're using the latest cloud technologies and you're moving a lot of your apps to the cloud, it's convenient because you can easily patch it and update it. You
right.
can easily scale it. So that became convenient, right? But if you had a physical data center or you had a whole bunch of physical servers sitting there with the applications running on it, and you need to scale it, that's not easy.
No.
Patching it is also not easy.
Mhm.
So you got to have a conversation of, what exactly is easy, so to speak, and convenient. You're making trade-offs really in my mind. And I think usually when you're leaning towards newer tech, the trade-off is worth it.
Okay, makes sense. Yeah. So, do you have any tips or advice for our listeners, those who are interested in technology careers, navigating ever-changing tech landscape?
Yeah, so look, I have some lessons learned in this one too.
Okay.
Um, I got early into the blockchain space when I was at CIA, and I thought, gosh, this is so great, this is so exciting, and I be really really focused on it, and then I started pushing it around the agency and telling people how the technology could solve a lot of our problems, whether it's contracting related or just enabling newer, more modern applications to be hosted using blockchain technology.
Mm,
And I was very early for my time and I got a lot of resistance.
okay.
And I didn't get a lot of money for my projects and it didn't go very far.
Okay.
And I was really discouraged by it. And I was like, gosh, why isn't this working? Like I've proven, using empirical data, nothing is subjective here, that this could actually solve problems for you. Uh, and what I learned from that is sometimes it's okay for you to build the skills for technology that the organization may not be ready for.
Mm,
Because fast forward 2 years later, when CNBC was talking about Bitcoin and Ethereum and Ripple and telling everybody to invest in it, all of a
mm,
sudden, all those skeptical people realize, maybe this thing is real. Maybe I should pay more attention to it. And then I got an influx of demand.
Mm.
Luckily, I stayed focused on learning the tech, and I
Okay.
didn't let all that skill, just bleed out of my brain.
Okay.
And it's hard because, every day there's something new coming out and it's hard for you to keep up, but I continue to invest in it and it paid off. The next 4 years, so the first 2 years I struggled, but for the next four, I ended up basically hitting it out the park. My brand within the organization became huge because of it. I ended up getting a lot of people outside the organization interested in it. And you were just ahead of your time. I mean, ChatGPT is the same thing. For the longest time, nobody really paid much attention to it, right? Maybe a little bit about, OpenAI came to the surface when Elon Musk was talking about it, but largely we didn't really pay attention to it. It wasn't until that one app became, enormously popular. It was all over the news and people became aware. Then it was like, oh, Gen AI, let's get into it.
Mm.
But guess what? Right now, if you're entering Gen AI, you're learning while everybody else is actually going out and implementing it. But
Right.
had you just invested some time early in learning this tech, even though it wasn't huge, you'd
Mm.
be ready for the big wave.
Right.
So the first advice is pick your bets wisely, right?
Okay.
Make sure that you see how the technology can actually support a business or actually improve the lives of someone or reduce friction or just generally makes things better, right? That's the general theme that you should have. Once you make that bet and you say, okay, I'm going to do this, don't look for an immediate instant gratification or, home run out of it. Just continue to invest slowly into it. And then a time will come. Usually, like if you're starting today learning some new tech that is likely going to come out, in 3 years in the public domain,
Mm.
you're going to have that time frame is about 3 years before it's really going to do anything.
Okay.
Are people really willing to invest about 2 to 3 years worth of their time on some new tech? Not really. Not really. But the ones who are really going to end up hitting a home run and being super successful, they will. They're going to invest in some new tech, some new approach, some new, way of doing business early, and they're just going to continue to work at it until it becomes super popular. And they're either going to cash in their skill by, selling their app or building an app or joining, some company that's looking for talent in it. Like, look, Microsoft, Google, AWS, they're all hiring like crazy for anybody with Gen AI. They're not laying off a single person with that skill set
Mm.
because there's not enough talent there. Even Facebook, like they'll hire anybody who has a PhD
Mm.
in Gen AI. Guaranteed job offer for you, right? Huge demand for that skill set. So I would tell you invest in it and stay focused, and you'll find that it's good. And generally, just be interested in it. Don't learn a skill because it's going to be hot. Be in it because you find yourself interested in it.
Okay. Yeah, that's a valuable piece of advice, Karan. Yeah.
Cool.
Thanks for joining me in this session, Karan. Any final thoughts?
No, thank you. This was a good discussion.
Okay.
I went all over the place, but hopefully your listeners learned something new from it.
Yeah, I hope so. And definitely we'll meet again in a wonderful session like this really soon. I
Yeah,
wish
yeah.
you the very best, Karan.
Absolutely. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Bye.